Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's well. I've just jumped on here today to give you an insight into some of the big announcements coming out of DVSA today about their new 7-point plan designed to help tackle these very long driving test waiting times that we're experiencing across the UK at the moment. We're in a period where driving test times have not significantly decreased as intended to the target the DVSA was looking for, despite best efforts, they will say, on their part to tackle the issues. So whilst at the start of the year, with that deployment of nearly 240 personnel back to the front line, we started to see some decreases in test waiting times across the country. By about October, November this year, we've been seeing around 19.4 weeks waiting time on average, with over a third of our test centres actually experiencing waiting times of over 24 weeks. So although waiting times seem to be getting better in, say, February this year, where we're starting to see, more of a move towards that 14-week target, by the summer, we were edging up to just over 18, and now we're back over 19 weeks again. So some radical changes have got to be made to actually drive these test waiting times down. So I'll quickly take you through now the 7-point plan that DVSA has launched today. You'll be able to read more about that online. I think we've included the link to the fuller explanation that DVSA has provided in the comms we sent out to members today. But I thought I'd just give you a whistle-stop tour through those 7-point plans and our views on those right now. So bear with me. So number one of the 7-point plan is to launch a call for evidence to look at the best ways to prevent candidates from being ripped off by the bots and the third-party booking sites that at the moment are causing arguably some of the most damage in terms of test waiting times. So this call for evidence is asking all of us stakeholders to give evidence on what we've seen out there as the problem and how it's impacting our students, our businesses as driving instructors, the whole waiting test scenario in itself, and also, to give some thought and some ideas about how these could be tackled. Now, DVSA has obviously made attempts to try and deal with these third-party sites, but clearly the people who operate them are very clever and they have technology designed to break through any kind of security that a government agency puts in place designed to deal with them. They're always one step ahead to some degree. But DVSA believes that it's got a better chance of getting on top of them if it can have as much evidence as possible as to how these bots are operating out there in terms of who they are, from everything from IP addresses being reported to actual personnel that might be involved in these companies, where these companies are that are doing it, anything, any intel that those of us on the ground can pass to DVSA to help them deal with this problem a lot better. Number two is quite a pivotal piece of the plan, and it's one that they've been admittedly struggling with to some degree for most of the time since lockdown, that this has been a problem. So number two is all about trying to employ 450 more driving examiners. That resourcing issue of actual manpower to the front line has always been the biggest challenge in supplying more tests whilst we're experiencing this great demand. More examiners means more tests can be carried out and can reduce the waiting time significantly. One of the problems with recruitment is the examiner job at the moment, given the pressure on the post itself, given the pay and conditions in general, is not necessarily the most attractive job to apply for out there. So DVSA is going to have to really work hard to get these extra 450 people. And as I said before, I'm not convinced a snazzy communications campaign is going to achieve that. If you saw me giving evidence at the recent Transport Select Committee and also PCS and AA and those other people who are giving evidence alongside me, one of the big things we talked about was the fact that the pay and conditions of the role aren't sufficiently attractive to get the numbers in, and that we're going to have to seriously look at, can we do anything around pay and conditions to make that role more attractive? So it's a bit of a good luck with that one. We've not necessarily seen the progress on recruitment thus far. DVSA will argue that they have had out about 200 job offers. They've deployed quite a number of new examiners, but they're still lagging behind their targets to some degree in terms of getting actual people out to the front line and being able to attract, new people to start the training process. Number 3 of their 7-point plan is encouraging learner drivers to be better prepared by adhering to the Ready to Pass campaign. So, the Ready to Pass campaign, most driving instructors are aware of now, and it'd be great if we as a community to get that campaign out far and wide to parents and to pupils as well, because it's a great campaign that's been designed by the hardworking DVSA comms team. And what they did there was came up with a concept that we need to talk to pupils and their parents about what makes somebody really ready for being licensed to drive independently on our roll, and get them to really think about when is the time that they should be booking that test and taking it and getting out there on the road. So if we can do anything to get that test out there further and get, sorry, that campaign out there further and get more people to take on board what it's trying to guide people in, that would be great. However, again, a little bit like the driving examiner campaign, though I'm a communications person by background myself, and I greatly believe in the power of comms, it is a bit of a feat to think that the Ready to Pass campaign and the examiner recruitment campaign is going to solve, the majority of the ills of the test waiting times situation. But we live in hope, and we'll get behind it as much as we can. Number 4 is quite an important part of the plan, and I'm really pleased to see this in there. It's about increasing the notice period for changing and cancelling tests without losing fees, which is designed to reduce the number of weighted tests that happen due to failures to appear, short notice cancellations. And if those happen, obviously somebody doesn't appear on the day or gives very short notice, cancellation, it makes it harder for DVSA to be able to use those slots through cancellations, and people pick them up through cancellation apps, etc. So more visibility and line of sight on cancellations is better. So encouraging pupils through, increasing the notice period would help with that particular problem. We've also, as DIA, suggested there should be incentives in place for pupils to drop slots back to the system if they're not ready. At the moment, we've got a situation that people will book that test, perhaps in a bit of a panic by the waiting times, waiting times crisis, thinking, I've got to get a test slot. I don't care when it is. I'm just booking it. Oh, there's one. It's sooner than I needed, but I'm going to grab it anyway. So we're seeing that behavior happening. And we've got a lot of people who are too afraid to drop that slot in case they don't get another one for 6 months. And they might just have a crack at that test before they're ready. And the worst case scenario is they fluke it and they're not really ready for independent driving, and they're out there and we've got somebody not sufficiently prepared for the challenges and risks of becoming a novice driver. So we want to do everything we can to encourage people to drop that slot back into the system so it can be used by somebody who is ready and not suffer a consequence because of dropping that slot. So I'll do a bit more detail on what our proposals have been there in a moment. Now, number 5 is another one that we completely agree with at DIA as well, that they're going to introduce a tougher set of terms and conditions for driving instructors who use the system to book and manage tests. So this is not about penalising driving instructors who are using the booking system properly. It's more designed at the nefarious operators trying to get into that system and book tests. So these tougher terms and conditions are designed to try and keep those nefarious operators out of the system so they can't scrape up the slots. So it's a good thing to have some toughening up of these T&Cs here. Number 6 in the 7-point plan is also something that we are very supportive of. And actually, DIA has frequently suggested these measures over the last few years, not just connected, by the way, to the test waiting times issue. It is, an issue that we should expect that the people going for test are not going to be dangerous drivers on the test, because that causes a problem for the test. But also, somebody who's dangerous on a test and the test has to be halted is not somebody we want to be getting onto the road anyway. And we also don't want to see somebody who's physically or verbally abusive getting a license either, because that behavior where they're abusive to a driving examiner or test center staff is going to manifest itself in some other risky behaviors in the road as well, such as road rage or other aggressions when driving. And also people who fail to attend their driving test and waste that slot. This is a suggestion that they should be penalised in some way, because they're taking up a place that somebody who's genuinely ready to go and can take that test, is available, can't do it. So these people are an opportunity cost for all the people who could be licensed and will prove to be, good, safe, competent drivers. So this is something, we're really pleased to see being brought in, not just in response to the test waiting times, issue, but in general, to make the system more robust in terms of, how it's used and who's going through the system and getting out onto the road as an independent driver. And number 7, the final point of the plan is exploring changing the current 24-week limits on how far ahead driving tests can be booked to better manage the demand for tests. So this point here is designed to reduce the pressure on the booking system and allow for better long-term planning. Will these measures have an impact? Well, DVSA believes these actions that are being taken now will help provide up to 1.95 million car driving tests between April 24 and March 25. So that's quite a significant uplift in what they're providing at the moment. And it will help reduce waiting times to 7 weeks by December 2025. Both of these targets have been confirmed in DVSA's business plan for 2024-25. So it's a target that they've kind of set in stone in their business plan and is really, putting them under the cosh to actually perform on. So we'd be very interested in your thoughts on the matter as to whether you think that these plans are actually going to have that impact. Some of the key takeaways and challenges for this 7-point plan that's been announced today from the DIA perspective. And you might have different views from us. This is just our view from the House, as it were. Now, what I am encouraged by with this 7-point plan is they are listening to ideas, they are listening to feedback. Things like the suggestions of a longer rebooking period to penalise failures to appear, risky candidates, and those are abusive. As I said before, this is something that DVSA has been suggesting, DIA has been suggesting for a long time. So we are supportive of this, we are pleased to see it, and we do feel that it'll have an impact. As I said earlier, we also suggested incentivising pupils to delay tests that they had booked if they feel that they're not ready. So we would have liked to see a bit more work here on, this incentive idea to get pupils to drop slots back to the system. And they are taking that forward in some respect to the proposal to increase the notice period on cancelling tests without losing fees. We also suggested some other measures such as a priority booking system. So if you gave up your slot because you weren't ready and then that became available for somebody else, the pupils who give up the slot should be incentivised in some way by being offered a priority path to be able to rebook the test when they are actually ready. Some of these plans are already in motion, i.e. recruiting more examiners. So they're not new plans. It's a nice spin to introduce a 7-point plan, but some of them are not new plans. They're things they've been trying to do for a while and not necessarily been as successful as they should have been with them. And examiner recruitment will continue to be a big challenge throughout this process. At the select committee, the one thing that was discussed that MPs were very interested to learn was why can't we do something about the pay and conditions? Is there not something we can do? So there is a big discussion taking place at government level now about what can be done to improve the pay and conditions for examiners to get more people into the role. So we'll remain to see whether that particular point in the plan is going to be effective, because it's arguably one of the most important parts of the plan. And whilst we support Ready to Pass, and I think the comms team at DVSA have done a brilliant job at pulling this together, getting it out there and getting the support from government to make sure it gets out there as well. Again, a communications campaign can only do so much. So rather than just comms, in terms of trying to gatekeep how people come to the test when they're ready and whether they should go through to test yet, are we actually better looking at some more robust changes, including we only have one gatekeeper to whether somebody goes to test, whether that's a system that people have to pass more competency goalposts like, our Project Milestones looks at. So you can't go to test unless you've proved competence in certain areas. So we have a little more theory testing, a little more practical testing going on on the way to the test, which is what other countries do. Or do we have an ADI-led gatekeeper process where the ADI signs off to people and they are the arbiter of who is ready for test? Because at the moment, we have a fairly arbitrary system where the pupil can decide to book themselves into test whether they're ready or not. And this is causing problems in the test waiting times issue, but also in wider novice driver safety when they go to the road. They put themselves through the process and they're not necessarily ready for the challenges of independent driving. So we think there are some challenges with this 7-point plan. There are wider challenges to how we train and test people and license them as first-time drivers. And these need to be taken seriously and dealt with, not just in the context of driving waiting times down. So in terms of fuller detail on those plans, we've sent you an update today which carries this video, but it also carries a link to DVSA's wider communications release on this. So you'll be able to see a little bit more detail on those plans if you look in that update. As I said earlier, we're really keen to get your thoughts on this. Obviously, you'll be encouraged to submit evidence for the call for evidence when that is launched in the new year. But let us know in the meantime what you think about the 7 point plan and whether it's actually going to be meaningful in reducing waiting times, but also, as I said, in that wider strategy of making sure who goes for test is the person that we want out there on our roads, driving independently. So just send us an email at support@driving.org and just insert a subject line there so we know amongst all the other emails that we get to support that this is driving test measures feedback, and we'll be really grateful for that. You can also let us know on our socials as well. If you want to see the Transport Select Committee that I gave evidence at the other week, which was MPs firing questions at witnesses like myself, but also Loveday Ryder and Road Safety Minister Lillian Greenwood, in terms of answering the challenges that were being raised by us witnesses, you can see that online. We've edited some highlights together. And we've also got some written evidence that we can share with you that we submitted as well. But you can see the YouTube link there. And when we send this round as a little presentation, you can click on that straight away and see myself and others giving evidence, and also DVSA and the Minister being grilled on the issues as well. Okay, I'll leave it there with you guys. Really looking forward to hear your thoughts. Really looking forward to seeing whether this 7 point plan is going to have the impact. We remain hopeful that there will be some change and some decreases in waiting times, but we'll see. Thank you, guys. Bye bye.